with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from SunnyHostin. Sounds like a town. We're in SunnyHostin.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
GregGutfeld and his crew absolutely roasted SunnyHostin, leaving her scrambling for cover like a politician caught with a burner phone. The burn was so intense that Hostin seems to have taken a social media hiatus, probably to apply some metaphorical aloe and salvage what's left of her dignity. So, what exactly did Gutfeld and his team say that turned Hostin into meme fodder? And how is she handling the relentless trolling? Stick around. We've got all the tea, and trust me, you'll be laughing so hard you might spill yours.
This is Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners.
SunnyHostin has been milking identity politics for what feels like an eternity. She's turned every stage she's graced into her personal soapbox, repeatedly reminding the world how the white man is the root of all evil and how black people have been systematically oppressed for centuries. But here's the kicker. For someone so vocal about the evils of privilege, Sunny seems to be doing just fine under that very system. High-paying gigs, cushy TV slots, a front-row seat at Hollywood's elitist club. Clearly, she's thriving in the empire she loves to critique. It's almost as if she's weaponized the very thing she condemns, cashing in on the white privilege narrative while sipping champagne at industry galas.
I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
You can practically see the embarrassment etched on SunnyHostin's face when she learned that her family were slave owners. The irony hits like a plot twist in a bad soap opera. You can almost hear the dramatic sound effect in her head as her carefully curated narrative crumbles into dust. For someone who's built a career on calling out systemic oppression, finding out her ancestors were running the system must have hit harder than a Gutfeld one-liner. It's the plot twist she never wanted, but boy, is it entertaining for the rest of us. But it gets even worse. Listen to what she says when the host asks her how she feels about the truth.
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of...
Really, Sunny? No scathing takedown of your ancestors for owning and driving slaves? Guess it's true what they say. People tread lightly when the shoe's on their own foot. Now, let's flip the script. Imagine if it were Donald Trump whose ancestry revealed slave owners. Oh, the uproar. You can already hear Sunny's fiery monologues about systemic evil and moral accountability, but when the tables turn, it's suddenly no big deal. It's just a fact of life. How convenient. Sunny cue GregGutfeld's comments, but let me warn you, hold on to your seats lest you fall off with laughter.
Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief SunnyHostin correspondent for a reaction.
Yep, Tyrus, laugh away. It's well-deserved. Sunny's position is nothing short of laughable, a masterclass in self-contradiction. Here's someone who spends her days preaching accountability and justice, only to wave off her own family's shady history with a casual shrug. Talk about setting the bar low enough to trip over. It's almost as if her outrage comes with an on-off switch, fully charged when it's about others, but conveniently drained when it's her turn under the spotlight. So go ahead, Tyrus, keep laughing. Sunny's position isn't just laughable, it's comedy gold wrapped in a bow of irony. But Gutfeld and Tyrus weren't the only ones to take a swipe at The View's host. Here comes Lou Perez's salvo.
On, new episodes of The View when she tries to pull the race card.
Yes.
And then she's like, America's racist. And then they're like, yeah, they might be racist, but they're not like slave owner racist. like somebody that we know.
How we'd live for an episode like that? Picture it. SunnyHostin, mid-rant, passionately condemning racism with her usual flair for hyperbole, when suddenly a bold studio audience member stands up and drops the ultimate plot twist, reminding Sunny of her slave-owning ancestry. You can almost hear the collective gasp followed by the awkward shuffling of cue cards. The dynamics here would be priceless. Would Sunny double down, deflect, or pivot faster than a politician caught in a scandal? Maybe she'd call it ancestral reparations or spin it into a tale of redemption. Either way, the hypocrisy would hang in the air thicker than Hollywood's self-congratulation at an award show. Now, if you think Lou's take was epic, wait till you hear Lisa Tim.
One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I talked about this before.
The very least SunnyHostin could have done was acknowledge that she now sees the whole reparations and racial argument from a slightly different angle, preferably one not dripping with irony. A touch of humility would have gone a long way. She could have gracefully admitted that her past statements might have been just a tad biased. But grace isn't exactly her strong suit. Instead, she's likely spinning this revelation into a teachable moment, or conveniently burying it under more monologues about systemic oppression.
Exactly, because if she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them?
We doubt she would, because nothing says new perspective like sidestepping accountability. But hey, maybe she's still processing the irony of her ancestors partaking in the very trade she so passionately condemns. Baby steps, right? But here's where the roasting gets worse for The View's host.
So wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Dana Perez, you're just a cold-blooded mercenary. I mean, bringing up how Hostin allegedly makes Whoopi fetch her coffee? That's a burn even the most seasoned roast masters would envy. All right, we're not saying that's literally happening, because we couldn't find a single video showing Hostin sending Whoopi to get her coffee, but the thought alone is enough to make you snicker. Anyway, regardless of the specifics, Dana's point lands with the precision of a sledgehammer. Maybe it's not just the ancestral slave ownership in Hostin's DNA, it's this whole master dynamic. Maybe she's got a little boss lady complex running through her veins, passed down from generations of, well, let's just say complex family histories. Either way, the irony is rich enough to make a millionaire blush. Just when we thought Dana Perez had delivered the takedown of the century, Joe Machi came in like a freight train on a mission, flattening anything left of SunnyHostin's defense with a single swipe.
In her defense, everyone has ancestors that did unspeakably horrible things. It's just that not everyone's ancestors have records tied to their DNA about.
So, Machi starts pretending to defend SunnyHostin. According to the comedian, everyone's ancestry has some dark chapters, so we should all just cut Hostin some slack. Sure, Joe, because who hasn't found out their great-great-grandfather was a pirate or a part-time villain in history's greatest crimes? But hey, let's not let the whole owning slaves thing overshadow the good qualities of being, well, a human being. Maybe we should all be more forgiving when someone's personal history involves benefiting from centuries of oppression, right? But just when we all thought Machi was for Hostin, the comedian delivered a hammer blow that sent Hostin right to the cleaners.
More worried for SunnyHostin's progeny in the future that do a DNA test and find out that they were related to a cast member of The View. And they're like, oh, it all makes so much sense now. Why I'm so stupid and fat.
Poor SunnyHostin. I can't help but wonder how she'd react if she ever tuned in to GregGutfeld and his crew casually dismantling her on national TV. Joe Machi, though? What a heartless mercenary. The cold-blooded precision with which he delivered his lines. Absolutely savage. But you know, he might be onto something. Imagine one of Hostin's own descendants digging through their family tree someday, only to discover they're connected to The View, arguably one of the most egregious TV shows in history. Talk about skeletons in the closet. At that point, even slave-owning ancestors might feel like the lesser evil. Fans who watched the show couldn't agree more with Gutfeld and his guests. One of them wrote, "SunnyHostin grew up in a wealthy neighborhood. Hood living in an elaborate home and still claims to be a victim. She's an ignorant person." Others felt Hostin was a hypocrite for joining the calls for reparations when her ancestors owned slaves. They opined that it was the height of irony for someone who benefited from a system they constantly criticized to now advocate for reparations. The #sign hypocrisy in action started trending as people called out the glaring double standard, pointing out how Hostin's rhetoric didn't match her own family history. I wonder how surprised she would be at the number of us who lost ancestral grandparents fighting to free slaves from her ancestors, but we don't need to line up for reparations. Another also added her family owned slaves and even moved where they could continue to get slaves yet wants reparations. What a hypocrite. It's wild how the situation with SunnyHostin has turned into a full-blown roast session, with some of the sharpest comedic jabs landing. The irony of her advocating for reparations while learning about her family's slave-owning past is undeniable, and you can't help but chuckle at how quickly things turned. Megyn Kelly really knew how to twist the knife with her suggestion that Hostin should be paying reparations instead of calling for them. It's a classic example of how the narratives people build can come crumbling down when faced with inconvenient truths. Sunny's public persona of standing against white privilege suddenly hits a snag, considering her own ties to it. Watching her try to navigate this irony is almost like watching a sitcom unfold. It's one thing to preach, but it's another to realize your own history doesn't quite match the narrative you've been selling. The best part is that this whole situation will likely keep giving, with the internet feeding off this irony and roasting it into oblivion. What a show!